Paul George signs a 4-year, $212 million max contract to join Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. Out of all the free agency news that has broken the last few days, this seems to be the biggest. There was a lot of questions about whether Paul George was going to return to the Clippers, whether he was going to get traded from the Clippers, he was going to opt in, they were going to work out some sort of sign and trade. He opted out of his deal and ultimately decided to go back out east to join the 76ers, joining another injury-riddled superstar, leaving one in the dust, and then joining Joel Embiid, former MVP. Before we get into other moves that they made as well, Jerry, I just want to get your initial thoughts, your reactions to Paul George joining the Sixers. Does this make them a championship contender, a legit one, or is this kind of like a good move for Philly? It's an upgrade over guys like Tobias Harris, but is it enough to move the needle?
Nah, I think it definitely is enough to move the needle, right? I think pretty much the whole entire season, especially at the deadline in 2024 before the All-Star break, everybody's kind of thinking Philly might try to swing for another two-way kind of player, but it wasn't necessarily going to be a star because of their assets. Nah, we'll see how things kind of go. Embiid gets hurt. Their season kind of plummets. They get to the playoffs, and Embiid plays on one leg and averages 30 in the postseason.
So crazy to think about. Yep.
Still insane. But I think they knocked this one out the park. I think it definitely makes them possibly the second or third best team in the East, right? I think they're right up there with the Knicks. I still think Boston has a gap on everybody else right now, but if they're healthy, there's a big asterisk besides Philly because PG jumped ship from one injury-prone star to possibly another.
Yes, he did.
So it's all contingent upon Embiid's health. Can he actually be ready for the postseason this time around? Because clearly this time around he was not. So I'm really going to put everything on that. They re-signed Kelly Oubre, which is another role-playing piece for them. Maybe you have a bigger starting lineup with two-way guys because that's what Kelly is. That's what PG is at an even better degree than Kelly. So I'm excited for Philly. I think it looks good. Tyrese, Embiid, PG, that's one hell of a big three. I think all three guys combined average something over 83 points or whatever it is. So that's probably going to be the most for a trio heading into the 2024-25 season. So I like it. Can't lie.
Yeah, and you brought up Maxey. He signed a 5-year, $204 million extension with the 76ers. So
well-deserved.
Well-deserved. They brought back their cornerstone, point guard, bringing in one of the biggest name free agents in Paul George. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I do believe that bringing in someone like Paul George does move the needle for them. More so, it's like, look at the upgrade. I mean, Tobias Harris, God bless him. He got his bag. He got what he needed from Detroit, going back home to Detroit. But going from Tobias Harris to Paul George is a big jump. Paul George, I believe he's 33 years old right now. He's in, closing on his mid-30s. So he's not, a young buck anymore. He's, kind of leaving his prime right now. He hasn't been the healthiest player in the world over the last few years. On paper, I believe. Same thing. Yeah, right. I think on paper they're great. I think on paper they are one of the strongest teams, at least in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
But it's just a matter of if they're going to stay healthy. Is Embiid going to stay healthy for a full year and then the postseason? Is Paul George going to be healthy for a full year and then the postseason? If everyone stays healthy, I think the 76ers could cause a stir in the Eastern Conference, and they could, upset some teams and really give Boston a fight to make it out of the East next year. But it's more so just I need to see it happen. It's hard for me to just say that, they're guaranteed to make it this far because with the injuries, you don't know. Yeah. I think they set themselves up nicely to position themselves to be one of the better teams in the East.
Yeah,
it's just all considering. That's all it is.
Yeah, so we're walking along the same path, man, because pretty much we know what Joel Embiid is capable of. Yeah. Although we do crown Nikola Jokic as the best player in the league today because he's healthy, he's available, and he plays way more than Embiid has in the last 3 years. Embiid has the talent to combat that and steal that crown if he puts in 70-plus games of work, plays an entire postseason healthy.
He was averaging 35 points a game last year. before he got hurt and his season
Yeah.
ended.
Yeah. So I'm really, I think we talked about it too when, sometime around the playoff time on this pod, where the teams that you were scared for your Boston Celtics to play against were the Knicks and the other one was Philly, depending on how Embiid looked. A
Right.
healthy Embiid is going to be the best player on the floor probably most nights. So
Sure.
it's going to be fun. But again, I agree with you. It's on paper, everything looks great. But just think about some notable big threes that kind of flopped. How about the one that just disbanded that he left, or super team situations, let's call it, and the one with the Clippers with
Yeah.
Kawhi himself, Harden, Russ. That didn't pan out too well. The Brooklyn situation didn't pan out too well. Like I'm trying to give him some benefit of the doubt because it's built a little differently, where it's
Right.
not a bunch of perimeter guys doing it.
You have
But
the guard, the wing, and the center. Like it's
so,
three very different positions.
in my head, it kind of feels like this is how most big threes should look if you're gonna try to piece one together, like Wade, Bron, Bosh. That made sense. Kyrie, Bron, Kevin Love.
Even the Celtics, Allen, Pierce, Garnett.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just makes sense. So, good job, Sixers.